Okay, thank you for joining us for our HCM Payroll Distribution Reporting Tool webinar. And tonight we're going to walk you through the different ways that you can use this tool. And I'm going to be passing the presentation over to Tiffany Boyd, who will start the presentation. And we also have Lindsay Anastasio, who is joining us tonight. She is our assistant controller, and she's here to answer any questions that you may have. And Tiffany is our senior manager for compliance, and she's going to start by sharing the agenda and moving through the first part of this session. So this is the webinar is yours, Ms. Tiffany.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us tonight. I'm going to do another quick sound check just to make sure you guys can hear me okay.
You sound great.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. So today's agenda, this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about what information HCM Distribution provides and how to use the tool. We're going to talk about what search criteria and the data that you can review by the different roles that you would use them for. So if you're a PI or a grant administrator, if you're a HR contact, or if you're a business manager or budget officer. We're going to show you other ways that you can view the data. We're going to talk about payroll retro funding changes and then retro funding changes that are greater than 90 days. We're going to talk about tips and reminders, show you some export options, tell you how you can access HCM distribution if you don't already have access, talk about some resources, and then who you can contact if you have additional questions. So HCM distribution, this is the reporting tool that replaced HCM View distributed data, if you recall that. That's no longer online and it's no longer available, so this replaced that. And this tool is in the same format as the old Payroll Hub that was used for the legacy information. It just has some additional search criteria options that will allow you to do some enhanced reporting. So what information is provided using this tool? It provides a listing of all the employees within the payroll system using a given set of parameters. So it'll give you a listing displaying payroll information by the employee, including their pay group, the funding chart field, gross earnings, and the cost of that employee's benefits to the department. And again, that's the benefits or the fringe expense, the employer share, not the employee share. So why is this tool important? It's used to complete a review and reconciliation of payroll charged to any particular account or chart stream so that you can verify accuracy of the employees charged. Do they belong on that account? Should they be somewhere else? Verify the rate of pay. Verify the account chart field. Make sure that the employee fringe benefits appear appropriate and reasonable. And mainly to use to detect any errors or problems so that you can facilitate any needed corrections as necessary. Who can use this tool? Anyone that has access. So if you're a PI or a grant administrator, a business manager, a budget officer, or an HR contact, you can access this tool and pull data. So when you log in to HCM distribution, these are the search criteria options that you're given. We're just going to walk through a couple of these. You'll notice that you have the option to put in a USCID or a name. This option right here is the check date, so that's the date that the check was issued. The pay end date here is the end date associated with the pay period, and that's more for back office use. The earns end date right here is the maximum timesheet date that the pay was actually earned. And again, these are more back office, these functions over here. When you're pulling data, we recommend that you live in this box over here. So the pay period from and to, that's actually the mid and end month payroll. So the first or the 15th and the last day of the month. And then the fiscal month, you know that it's here, it shows all, but you can actually select the drop down menu and select the GL fiscal year month that you'd like to see the data for. So for example, July is the first month in the GL fiscal year. So you'd be able to select July, August, June, so on and so forth. And then fiscal year, of course, runs through July 1st through June 30th. And so in this example, we've selected fiscal year 2019 to 20. Depending on what you're pulling data for example, if you're looking at grant funding or things of that nature, we always recommend that you select all when you're doing fiscal year. And that's just to make sure that you're pulling in any retro adjustments or retro funding changes that may have occurred, for example, in the current fiscal year that may be related to the funding source that you're pulling or that project, so that you're getting the most up-to-date balance. And again, we just want to remind you that it is important to be familiar with both the payroll schedule and the hourly schedule. And both of those items are posted on the payroll website, and you can use these hyperlinks to access those. And as we mentioned, the pay groups are very important to know. Some pay groups are paid currently and others are paid on a lag. So when you're reviewing payroll information and determining if something needs to be moved because it's out of period, or the effective dates of account changes and things of that nature, it's important to know whether or not that employee is paid current or on a lag. In this chart right here, we recommend you printing it out or saving it so that you have it as a quick reference. So for our PI and grant administrators, you can easily search by entering in a project number, or you can enter in, for if you have a larger grant that has multiple projects, you can also enter in a contract number, and it will pull all the payroll associated with all the projects on that contract. In this example, we're going to enter in a project number. We're going to select fiscal year all, and we're going to ask it to go ahead and total, subtotal, and detail, give us all the detail information. And we're going to hit submit. And we're going to go ahead and tell us, hey, give us everything. I want all pay periods. And again, remember that this is only payroll that has occurred in HCM. So this does not include anything prior to payroll in HCM. So again, that's April 2019. So if you need to access payroll that occurred prior to that, you'll have to go to the legacy payroll system, which is available on the Finance Intranet. So based on that search criteria, this is the information that was returned. You'll notice that it gives us the name, their USCIT, the fiscal period that the payroll occurred, their job code, their HCM home department, and then their pay group. So you'll notice here that there is C12. And if we were to refer back to that previous slide, that would tell me that they're paid current. It also tells us what pay period that they were paid for, the check number, check date, and then the combo code in the chart field associated with that combo code. This first column is the labor dollars, or the salary expense associated with this individual for that pay period. And then these columns here are the fringe benefits associated. So whether it's tax, retirement, long-term disability, health, dental, based on what they're enrolled in, the employer's share of those fringe benefits. The fringe dollar amount column here is the total of these lines. And then of course here, that's the total of both the labor and the fringe expense. And again, what are you looking for? Well, for this particular project, this is project 109070. We're making sure, are these employees the employees we're expecting to see charged on this project? Is this employee supposed to be 100% charged here? Or should they be charged 50% here and 50% elsewhere? This system automatically defaults to chart field name. So this is actually showing us an employee. This is a single employee, all the pay periods that they've been paid up until a certain point, and it subtotals by that employee. So looking at all the pay periods that they've been paid, is this correct? Did they work all of these pay periods on my project 100% of the time, or did they not? Did they switch in the new year? Maybe perhaps in January, starting in January, they switch to another project. So again, these are the things that you would look or use this tool to review and look at so that you can make any needed corrections as necessary. In this next example, we're just going to look up a specific employee. So we would enter in their USC ID. We're still going to select fiscal year all, and we're going to pull all their information, and we're going to pull it by pay period, order by pay period, name, and we're going to ask it its subtotal and total and give us all the details and select submit. And now you'll notice that it is totaling this by pay period and it's giving us the total funding. So not only do we see what was charged to the project, so in this example for this employee we can see 53% was charged to project 8328, and then the other 46% of their pay is charged to a Z fund. So again, this just kind of allows you another method of seeing how a person's time is being charged. It gives you another way to view it. So back in the previous example, if just showing you other ways that you can view the data to help you discern how a person should be charged or what changes need to be made. So in this example, perhaps now that I've got the full view of how this person's time is being split each pay period, maybe the 50% is right. Maybe they are spending about 53% on this project, but they're also spending time on another project. So that 46% isn't correct. And now I know enough information to initiate the account changes. Our retro funding changes needed, if that makes sense. And feel free to type any questions you have in the chat box, and we're happy to answer as many of those as we can. Another feature we want to point out is that you can also pull up cost share here. There's a cost share box right here, so you would enter in the project number associated with any cost share that you would need to pull, and enter in the period or periods that you would want to pull that information for. And again, we're asking it to total and subtotal for us, and we're going to submit this information. And we can see here all the cost share that has been tagged for this project. You'll notice that the actual chart field is on an E-fund. So the actual expense is sitting on that E-fund, but we have tagged it or put a little sticky note, as I like to think of it, tagging it as cost share for this particular project. And another thing that I wanted to point out is we know it's a cost share because the combo code starts with a C. All cost share combo codes start with a C. There's also a cost share query that you can run directly out of PeopleSoft if you wanted to verify the data further. And this is that query name. And you can always, always, always reach out to your post-award accountant if you have questions about cost share commitments and things of that nature. And you can also use the grant dashboard. It also will give you what your current cost share balance recorded on any given project is. And you can also run things by contract in that dashboard. And we have webinars out there on the controller's website that goes through how to use that tool if you're unfamiliar with it. So now we're going to go into a live demonstration.
Before you do that, Tiffany, we have a question.
Okay.
Will the system actually display 1,000 records, or will CSV download be required? If so, what is the max for online display?
Well, you do have the option. I'm going to go ahead and flip screens. So anytime you're pulling data, let's say you were trying to pull something for an entire operating unit, you do always want to, if you know you're going to be pulling a lot of records, you want to go ahead and add zeros up here so that it will adjust. I'm not really sure what the max number of records are. I know it's pretty high. I think we have ran the entire operating unit, and I think we did it, well, I've only done it for one fiscal year.
Yeah, and we did it for CL 071.
For a whole fiscal year, and we didn't have any issues. And it was 96,000 rows or records.
Yeah. And so, Joya, you would want to do that because I believe you're arts and college of arts and science. So definitely adds. You're welcome, Joya.
So I always recommend just remember to go, if you know you're going to be doing a lot of data, go ahead and add zeros up there at the top. So for our demonstration, we're actually in a test environment, and we're going to be looking up Harry Potter's pay. And I have already submitted. Let me make sure that I haven't timed out. Sometimes it does that. It's thinking. And it looks like I'm good. So we can see here that this is the live data. And I have already selected from pay period. I'm doing all. But you'll notice that I can total and subtotal. And if I do that and submit, it will go ahead and do that for me. So now you'll see that it is summarizing and subtotaling by chart field. That is the default, is by chart field. And you'll notice that while there's multiple sources here, he's only being cost shared to 3 different projects. I know that he's being cost shared because it's a combo code that starts with C. And you'll notice that the actual chart field here is all the same account. It's just being tagged as cost share. And I know that because the combo code starts with the letter C. But if you come over here, I can also change the output just to show you an example of the different ways that you can view the data. And because this is all, I'm not sure what, sorry, that's breaking it down by pay period. So if I order it by pay period in chart field, that's the example. You can see here, oh, let me get rid of the, there's a lot of extra subtotals in here, so I apologize. So here you can see it's breaking it down each pay period, how their time is actually divvied up. So their total pay, Harry's total pay, each pay period is actually $12,000 and it's divvied up accordingly. 25% is sitting on the e-fund, and then 20% is being cost shared here, and 55% is being cost shared here. And this is a great way to see, you know, how each pay period is changing. So when you're doing your review, you can see it's pretty consistent for 115, 131, 214, 228, but then we can see it's changing once we get to 315 or 315 down here. We can see that the cost share for project 9608 drops off. And then we can see for 415, there's no cost share recorded at all. So again, just a different way for you to see and use the tool to evaluate. Did they not work on the project then? I would assume that that's the case, but maybe there was something that was missed. And again, this is just how you can use different ways you can use the tool to review the information to determine whether or not there's anything that needs to be corrected or if everything's good. And so, for example, for March 15th, when we have project 9608 dropping off, and we have the percentage between for 8359 change, again, it went from 25 to 20%. So just different ways you can see and use this tool.
I have a question. Will our pays also be reflected in the pay period view?
Yes. So if there are any retro funding changes, they would be a little pink line. And we'll talk about that later in the presentation. In the test environment, we don't have any retro funding changes. This is actually the only employee that we have in the test environment. So unfortunately, we don't have more data to show you. But if there were any retro funding changes, they would be included right here, and they would be a red line. And again, to ensure that you're pulling any retro funding changes, you want to make sure that the fiscal year does say all, because again, the timing of those may not necessarily fall in the same fiscal year, depending on when you catch them and when they've been processed. So just again, to ensure that you're pulling them, you might want to always make sure that you select fiscal year all. and then just some different ways. We'll go back into this demonstration to show you the different output options in just a few. But I just kind of wanted to show you a live demonstration of how this information looks. So with that, we're going to jump back over to our PowerPoint. And so again, just to kind of tie it back into like time and effort reporting, this is the tool that you'll use to further review employees' payroll information. And so for business managers specifically, this will be what you use to verify the report to ensure it's correct prior to releasing it for certification. We have issued time and effort reports for the January through June certification cycle, and those are due by October 9th. So we do ask that you pay extra close attention to any emails that you receive regarding taking action on those reports so that we can meet that deadline. So now I'm going to kick it over to Joanne, and she's going to walk us through the HR contact portion of this presentation.
All right, thank you, Tiffany. So I'm just going to walk through a couple of examples of how an HR contact may use the payroll distribution. And so I'm going to talk about the two examples are going to be by department and by employee. So we're going to begin by looking at a department, and you would enter the department here in this field. We're going to look at actually one pay period, 12/15 through 12/31, and for fiscal year 2019-2020. And we're just going to look at it in the defaulted view, which is just the detail by chart field and name. And after we enter all of that information, we're going to click Submit. And so the return data is going to help you identify all employees that are being paid within this department and making sure that they're being paid using the correct funding source. And then also that all retro funding changes are processed and are correct. And as you can see here, all retro changes are identified with pink lines. And so those are highlighted right there in the pink box. You also want to take a look at the labor and fringe amounts to make sure that they are looking accurate as well. And then our next search would be to search by employee. So you would enter an employee's USC ID. And what's really great about this tool is that you actually don't need to know their USC ID. You can just start by entering the employee's last name, and then several results will pop up there, and you can select the correct employee, and that will populate their USC ID for you. We're going to search once again by a specific pay period and a very specific fiscal year. But this time we're going to look at, we're going to order the information by pay period and name, and then we're just going to have the default detail showed as well. And once we have all that information entered, we're going to click Submit. And so this is just another way that you can make sure that an employee is being paid using the correct funding source. Making sure that there are no overpayments or any underpayments for this employee. All retro funding changes have been processed and are correct. Taking a look at labor and fringe amounts. And then also, this is a great way, HR contacts, to identify whether an employee has gone into HCM employee self-service to enter their direct deposit information. If you look at the check number here, any check number that begins with the number 8 indicates that that employee has been paid direct deposit. If the check number begins with the number 7, that indicates a live check. So this may be appropriate for the employee, but if not, it's a great way to know that you need to reach out to them to encourage them to enter their direct deposit information in HCM. So this employee there was a retro JE moved to a new funding source for periods 12/15 and 12/31 fiscal year 2019. And you can also see that there are some removing and adding of funding sources here. So that's what this screenshot is showing you. All right, now as business managers or budget officers, there are several different ways that you may want to look at the information. You may want to look by operating unit. You may want to look just by employee. You may want to look at one specific account or even by an earning code. So we're going to start by looking at, by searching by an operating unit. And so you're going to enter your operating unit up here. We chose CL071, our largest operating unit in the university. And we are actually going to look at an entire fiscal month. So we just entered December there, and we kept the fiscal year 2019-2020, and we kept the default order by and detail. And we click submit. So looking at this information, you're able to complete a monthly payroll review and reconciliation for all employees by reconciling budgets to expenses and funds across the entire unit, especially your A funds. And then you can also, it's a great way to identify any spike in pay, indicating an annual leave payout or an overpayment. So, and we also talked about, and Joya brought this up, since CL071 is such a large unit, to make sure that all of the data is returned, you may want to increase that the number of records. And you can do that just by adding zeros. So a budget officer or a business manager may also want to search by employee. And so you would enter the employee's last name, first initial, to get that list that you can select their name from. And then you're going to, I also did this by fiscal month of December and fiscal year 2019-2020, kept the other defaulted order buys and the detail information. And then we would click submit. And the return data, you can identify any overpayments and underpayments, the employee, making sure that the employee is charged to the correct chart field, all of the retro funding changes, making sure that they have been processed and they are correct, looking at the specific earnings. And to do this, you can drill down into the labor. You can do that by either clicking the hyperlink here, as the screenshot is showing. And Tiffany likes it. She talks about this in our other sessions, especially our finance intranet, that, you know, this is a view-only tool. So any hyperlinks that are there, I don't know if you're like me, but if I see something and it's hyperlinked, I'm going to click it. Some people are not the same way, but that's what I tend to do. So any of those links that are red are hyperlinked, and you can click them, and then they'll give you more detail. So you can click the labor here, which will give you the earning information that you see here in the box. And now you can see the specific accounts listed here for that employee. Another way to do that, and Tiffany's going to show you that a few slides down the road, that you can actually select fringe vertical, and that will actually show you that information as well. Okay. Another way that business managers may want to search payroll information is by account. So maybe you may want to see the number of classified employees you have, the number of unclassified employees, or maybe you just want to know how many temporary employees you have. So you would actually enter your operating unit up here. And so for this first one, we're actually want to see how many classified employees we have for operating unit CL018. And so we have that account in the account field 51200, and we're going to look at that for the entire fiscal year of 2019-2020. And then we're going to click submit. And so these screens are just showing you what you would see. So the first screen is showing you the number of records found, which would be 1,333. And for the account code 51200, and that's showing you the information for classified employees. You can do the same thing for the other two accounts showing here, 51300 and 51600. And that's just an example of the accounts that you can use. There are others as well. And here they are. So this is another great slide that you guys, great resource that you can print and have at your desk so that you're familiar with what those account codes are. But I'm sure many of you are in HCM a lot. These, have been in HCM over the last year, and so those account codes are becoming very familiar to you. All right, so now we're going to do our last search by earnings. And so you have the distribution code field here. That is actually where you're going to enter your earning code, and then you're going to enter your operating unit. We are going to do this for the entire year, fiscal year 2019-2020. And then we're going to click submit. So you're going to use this data for budget projection. And when you're making salary projections for the upcoming fiscal year, you want to make sure that you're subtracting additional pay and bonuses from regular pay. And so in order to see that, you actually need to enter those earn codes into that distribution field so that you can get that information will be returned for you. And I believe that's all I have, Miss Tiffany. And here are a list of just some of the earn codes that we have. These are probably the earning codes that you are most familiar with, and the earning codes that that you will probably use most often in that field.
All right. Well, thank you, Joanne. Now we're going to jump into just other ways to view the data. And as we mentioned, we're just going to pull data by a specific project. In this example, we're going to use project 109070. And again, we're just pulling all the information related to it to ensure that we're capturing all the retro funding changes regardless of when they occurred. We're going to select fiscal year all, and we're just going to select detail. It automatically defaults to chart field name. That is the default. And so that's what you've seen all of the screenshots so far. But you also have the ability to do chart field by name and to add subtotals. So that will subtotal it here. And this option gives all the pay periods for that employee together for that specific chart field and then adds the subtotal for you. You can also do chart field by pay period. And this option groups and subtotals all the information by pay period. So it shows all the employees that received pay for each pay period, and it's subtotaled by pay period. So you'll notice these are different names over here, and it's grouped by each pay period. And then this option, by selecting total and unselecting subtotal, again, just different options that you can use to organize the data to either make it more busy or less busy, give you more totals or less totals. Totally dependent based on what your needs are. And then one of my favorite features, Joanne picks on me, is this fun little box down here called Sum Adjustments. So in this example, you'll notice that there's a lot of retro funding changes, right? We got a lot of pink lines. So we see where, you know, the payroll hit, and then we had a retro funding change come through to remove it. So it kind of gets a little busy, but the total amount that's been charged for this particular employee is $4,888. So if we use this little Sum Adjustments checkbox, it magically cleans up the data and just shows you the net that's on that account. We still have the pink lines that let you know that there's been retro funding changes, but now we just see the net that remains. So we don't see the in and out, in and out, in and out. But you'll notice that the same $4,800 is there. So the dollar amounts aren't changing, it just shows you the net amount left on the account. So if it's zero, it eliminates the busyness of it. So I think it's a really great feature. It kind of cleans up the data and makes it a little bit easier to review when you're looking at it. So if you haven't been using that little box or you wonder what that box meant, I think it's a great tool. You also have the ability to show the data just fringe only, horizontal. And again, this is the default where it gives you labor and fringe. But you can also do fringe detail vertical. And I just want to highlight that you'll notice on the previous screen, it gives you the chart field, but it doesn't tell you the account code. So just by looking at this screen, I don't know if this is a classified employee, an unclassified employee, a student worker, so on and so forth. But if I change this output option to fringe detail vertical, I can now see that it is account code 51200. So you can get that information if you change the output detail and see that. Another good thing about this particular output, if you did have a question as it relates to, oh, I'm not sure if this person is paid current or on a lag, you can come here and see that the check date associated with this person or the pay period is 1/15, but the check date is actually before that. So that tells you that this person is paid current. In addition to the fact that their pay group is C12, and if we go to our reference guide, we know that that pay group is paid current. Now, if we were to look at somebody that's paid on a lag, we'll notice that this check date is actually after the pay period date that you see here. So that's the indication that they're paid on a lag. And again, if we were to refer to our handy dandy reference guide and we were to look up pay group P12, we would see that they're actually paid on a lag. And if we weren't sure, C12, they're paid current, and P12 is 12-month lag. So again, I always recommend you print this out and have it or save it to your desktop so you can always refer to it. It's a great resource, and when in doubt, you can always look here and see. So some additional output options, you can always pull a report for fringe only. So if you don't, or actually this, yeah, fringe only. So this shows you just totals. So it doesn't give you all the details. It gives you the labor total and then the fringe total and then the total of both. And then this is the labor total. So if you don't need all the information related to fringes, you can also just say, hey, I want a labor only report, and it'll just give you the salary information. And that's what this report is doing for Department 120-400A funds for the month of January. And just to show you those different options live, if we go up here, let's take it back to our default, and then I'll show you these different output options live in real time. So we have the default is always fringe summary, where it's going to give you the labor and all the details related to the fringe, but you can do fringe detail, vertical, which will then break it out vertically, line by line, and tell you what that account code is. So this is 51300. And you can see here 115, 115. So this person's paid current. If the date matches or is before, then that's how you know they're paid current. The other option is fringe total only, and this gives you, it's thinking, I apologize. This gives you the labor total and the fringe total, and then the total of both. So it doesn't give you all that fringe breakdown in between. And then last but not least, you can do labor, and it'll just give you labor only. And that's what that report looks like. And you can still change how you want it ordered in any of these output options. And if you ever just wanted to look at a particular chart field, you can pull that information by the specific combo code. If I just wanted to look at this portion only, you can run it by just that combo code by putting that information up here. You can also put in just that operating unit and department and fund. You can run it by specific projects, contracts, or cost share. And so here we're just pulling the information associated with that combo code. So again, all kinds of ways you can pull this information. If I just wanted what hit 51300, again, because I know that's the account code associated with this, it's going to give me the same information because that's where he's coded. So again, just different ways you can pull this. Because this is the only person we have here, we're kind of limited on the data we can show you. So then what do you do if you need a retro funding change? Well, this is the form that you would fill out to request one, and this form can be found on our homepage located on the Controller's Office website. You can click this link and it'll take you directly to it. I do want to highlight that the paycheck date that you need to fill in here, you do have to request them by paycheck date for each individual employee, and that paycheck date is the original date of the pay. So if it's already been retroed, for example, if there's already a RPay entry, it's already been moved once, you can't put the RPay date in the paycheck date. It has to be the original date that the pay was paid or given to the employee. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. So just make sure that you follow the detailed instructions to complete the form. And if there is any supporting documentation needed, such as a cost transfer memo, that you go ahead and supply that. That's just to ensure that we can expedite processing as quickly as possible and we don't have to reach back out. And we do want to remind you guys that no manual forms or hard copies will be accepted. You have to email them to the RetroJ email box. Otherwise, they will not be processed. And just a reminder of how the process now works. The Controller's Office, we will create the actual retro journal entry, and it will post as a JE, and then those changes will be uploaded into HCM Distribution, and those are the pink lines that you see. And so anytime you see a RPay 00042, that is our entry. That is the JE that the Controller's Office created and uploaded to process that retro funding change. You can expect a 2 to 3 day turnaround before you see it in HCM Distribution. And again, they're pink lines, so they're super easy to identify if it's been processed or not. Please remember that these need to be completed within 90 days of the pay date. And of course, if you have, final reporting or final invoices due, that 90 days could be shortened accordingly. And workers' comp and unemployment expense does post on the 1st and the 15th separately from here. So you're not going to see those expenses in HCM Distribution. You will have to go to Finance Internet to find those expenses. So if you do have retro funding changes that are greater than 90 days, they must have a cost transfer memo, and they will be subject to the cost transfer policy. And again, we have a webinar out there on the Controller's website that will tell you all about that policy and what to expect and what to do. So in your leisure, feel free to go out there and explore. But the cost transfer memo must answer the following 4 questions. The first one is, why was the expense originally charged to the wrong account? So what error or circumstance created the error? The second question is, why should the expense be transferred to the proposed account? So how is this expense benefiting the project that is being requested to be moved to? The third question is, why is this cost transfer being requested more than 90 days after the original transaction? And, just simple administrative error, we need a little bit more detail than that. So please take the time to write up the memo and provide the needed detail. And then the last question, how will you prevent this type of error or situation from happening in the future? So then just some tips and reminders. Again, please remember to complete any retro account changes within 90 days of the pay date, and be sure to clear search criteria fields before submitting a new search. I know it's stumped me quite a few times. I'm like, why can't I get anything to pull? And then I realized I had something still in my search boxes up there that was preventing the data from pulling. And reports can be created by pulling data into an Excel spreadsheet. It will require a little bit of cleanup, and I'm going to show you what that data looks like in just a minute. And then just a reminder that VDD is decommissioned, or View Distributed Data is decommissioned and no longer accessible, if anybody recalls that at all.
This may be a good time also to mention that to request access to HCM Distribution, a service ticket is no longer required. You actually just need to complete the form, and that's available out there on the Controller's Office website, and email that form to PS Secure. So PS Secure will take care of making sure that you have the access that's requested.
Absolutely, and I think we have a whole slide on that. So now I'm going to talk about export options. There are two different options. The first option is to just use the CSV option. So that's that button that you see out there. So this option will download all the data into the Excel file. The file will include all the background data that's not actually shown on the screen. So you're going to have to clean up and manipulate the file to make it useful. But then once you do that, it can easily be converted into a table or placed into a pivot table. The second option is you can simply highlight the data that you see on the screen and then paste it into Excel. I do want to remind you that you do need to remove the hyperlinks and maybe resize the columns. But other than that, what you see on the screen will be what you see in Excel. So just to show you what I mean, this is an example of the file being directly downloaded, and you can see that there are a lot of columns here and there's a lot of data. And obviously you probably don't need all this information, but I do want to point out a couple of important columns. You have the pay begin date, the pay period, check number, USCID, and we have Megan Trainor, Bradley Cooper, and Brad Pitt as our employees in this particular example. And we have their pay groups here, so we'll know whether or not they're paid current, on, or lag. And then we have here their deduction type, their combo code, and then if you scroll on over, you'll also know what their account code is for the various charges. So basic life, basic long-term disability, dental health, things of that nature, and if it's a deduction, if it's tax, or if it's earnings, and the amounts of those various things. Their home department. So there is a lot of information, and these columns go way far out. So you can, as you can imagine, a lot of this you may not necessarily need. But with a little bit of cleanup, you can easily pivot this data and summarize it by pay period, by employee, the earnings, the deductions and tax, and the grand total. So this is just an example of it already cleaned up and how you could end up using the data that you've exported. The other example is just the copy and paste option. In this option, I simply highlighted everything that I saw, and then I pasted it directly into the Excel file, and then I right-clicked, and then when you do that, if there's hyperlinks located in the file, you'll have the option to remove them, and I selected Remove Hyperlinks. Because there's no longer any hyperlinks here, that's not an option. But at least in this format, it looks exactly like it did on the screen. And then you can use this data to add, delete columns as needed if you're doing projections or things of that nature. So again, just some options that we wanted to show you that you could do if you wanted to. So with that, how do you access HCM? Like Joanne mentioned, users with HR Home Department Access and PeopleSoft HCM will have the same access in HCM Distribution. This access feeds nightly and is updated when Home Department Access changes in HCM. And then users that are listed on the project as the project team member within PeopleSoft Finance will also receive access. Now, if access changes are needed, you simply fill out the HCM distribution access form and email it to pcsecure@mailbox.sc.edu. So like Joanne mentioned, you no longer need to do a formal ticket or anything like that. You can simply email the filled out form to this mailbox and access will be granted. Just make sure that the form is signed by your operating unit business manager. And remember that manual entry of funding departments require manual removal. So it is important to request removal using that same access form when someone leaves. Otherwise, their access will never be removed.
And they will receive emails to trainings that no longer pertain to them.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about operating units, if you want to go back, just the operating unit business manager, we're referring to like the Kate Durrells, the Susan Clees, the Sandy Besleys. Those are the business manager signatures that we're looking for.
So I guess we could say maybe the finance officer.
Yeah.
or the business officer.
It's hard to give them a name.
Yeah, is the person that we're looking for.
Absolutely.
And so where can you find additional resources? If you go to, like we mentioned, the Office of the Controller's website, Grants and Funds Management, webinars and training, this is a great resource. We've got a already recorded HCM payroll distribution webinar out here. We also have grant dashboard training. We've got time and effort training. We've got all kinds of training out here. Feel free to go out here and explore. We also have additional resources available via these links. So links to the account codes and earnings codes reference sheet, the hourly pay schedule, that file that I used to show you in Excel, that's also available. If you want to see how I pivoted or anything of that nature, you can play with that. Payroll schedules and pay group reference sheet are also available. So if you need support, if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate. If it's regarding retro journal entries or retro funding changes, you can email the RetroJ email box directly. And if you're a PI or grant administrator and you have questions regarding HCM payroll distribution, we encourage you to reach out to your post-award accountant. And if you're not sure who that is, if you are familiar with the grant dashboard or the GL dashboard, you can enter in your project ID and your project team will come up, and whoever's listed in that CGA role is your post-award accountant here centrally. And then for general questions, you can always reach out to this email address at controller@sc.edu. So with that, I'm going to open it up to you guys with any questions you might have.
No questions.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate your time, and I know this was a late one, but we were trying to give everyone an option that may be teaching during the day, or have multiple meetings during the day, things of that nature. We just wanted to make sure there was multiple options and everyone had the chance to attend live and ask questions.
Absolutely. And I know that some of you during the day, your phones are ringing and people are coming and going out of your office. So you probably get an opportunity to really focus on the training. We do have a question. Could you show the account code slide again?
Account codes? Absolutely. Let me see if I can find it. You said account codes, so like 51200, 51300?
Yeah.
All right, let's go back.
There it is. Nope, those aren't the codes. Keep going.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. And Darlene, we will send we'll have this PowerPoint presentation put out on the website, but we can also send it to everybody that participated as well. Did you have a question about them, Darlene? Is summer instruction supposed to be 51300? Oh, okay, yeah, because we've got 51300 unclassified, and then we have 51300 summer instruction. Oh, is CG still on here? I don't know if CG would know the answer.
Should be 51330.
330. Okay, so we need to make that change. Good catch, Darlene. Thank you so much. We'll make that change and update that slide. Thank you, Lindsay.
It's changed.
There we go. Look at that. Okay. Any more questions before we sign off this evening? I think that's it, Tiffany.
All right. Well, thank you all so much, and we appreciate your time, as always.
Have a great rest of your evening, everybody.